Inside a magnificent cathedral, a royal wedding is in full swing. But the bride, Elena, looks absolutely miserable. She reveals that this is a forced marriage to a man she doesn't love, all for political power play. In this empire, an unbreakable law dictates that only the man who marries the Saintess can ascend to the throne. This custom binds the imperial family and the church together, sealing Elena's fate. As the Saintess, she is trapped, destined to marry whoever is chosen to be the next emperor, regardless of her own feelings. Elena's heart belongs to someone else, a man named Ferris. A memory of his smile flashes through her mind, but the cruel whispers of the nobles bring her crashing back to reality. They sneer about her origins, revealing a shocking truth. The new Saintess was just a commoner, personally purchased by the high priest after all the other candidates conveniently disappeared. The memory stings, her own father, handing her over in the rain and telling the clergyman to use his daughter, however he saw fit, sealing her bleak future. Elena's mind spirals back to the high priest's cruel indoctrination. He declared she was nothing more than a commoner sold into servitude, a candidate whose only purpose was her mission. A fleeting, beautiful memory of meeting Ferris is violently ripped away by a much darker one. She sees him again, but this time he's captured and kneeling before her. The high priest forces a heavy tool into her crying hands, ordering her to show no mercy. She must be the one to break the spirit of the man she loves. She must banish Ferris. He warns that if she can't do it, he will step in, and he won't be gentle. Ferris's life is entirely in her hands. The scene flashes to a broken Ferris kneeling before her, calling her name in confusion as his world fades to black. But the nightmare dissolves into a brilliant light. Elena stands before the high priest, who announces her holy union. She is now bound not to Ferris, but to Crown Prince Ilias, the emperor-to-be. The dark memory fades, replaced by the blinding white of a wedding hall. Elena stands at the altar, where the priest asks her to pledge eternal love to Crown Prince Ilias. Her silence hangs heavy in the air, broken only by the high priest's sharp command to hurry up. Prince Ilias calmly defends her, suggesting she's just nervous. But inside, Elena's heart screams a different name: Ferris. He is the only one she loves. Resigned to her fate, she concludes she no longer has the right to love him and must simply fulfill her duties. A scream suddenly shatters the wedding hall's sacred silence. Pandemonium breaks loose as guests flee in terror, shouting about an attack. Down the aisle walks Ferris, his armor marked from a recent battle. The high priest and Prince Ilias stare, recognizing the intruder with shock. Elena is frozen, barely able to whisper his name. Ignoring the guards' drawn swords, Ferris locks eyes with the prince, a defiant smirk on his face. He wasn't about to let this wedding happen. He had come for his Saintess. The high priest exploded with fury, condemning Ferris as a lowly commoner for daring to defile the sacred marriage. But Ferris simply denied the insult. In a flash, he bypassed the guards and struck Prince Ilias, who crumpled to the floor. With cold eyes, Ferris declared that he was no mere commoner. He was the one who would become emperor. Elena screamed his name in despair, asking why. He answered that this was merely revenge on the man who had taken everything from him. All she wanted was to protect him. Elena's heart shatters. Looking at the man she loves, she silently apologizes, regretting that she couldn't protect his once kind soul. But it was too late. With a cold and empty gaze, Ferris raises his sword. A strange calm washes over Elena as she closes her eyes, thinking that if her end could lessen his suffering, she would accept it. A dark stain blossoms on her white dress. With tears streaming down her smiling face, she accepts her fate, feeling no regret as her world finally fades to black. Elena's eyes flutter open. She's confused to see her mother shaking her awake, a woman she hasn't seen since being sent to the temple. But this is no sweet reunion. Her mother yanks her by the hair, angrily telling her to get ready, because the high priest is coming to buy her.
Stunet, Elena grabs a mirror.
Staring back is not her present self, but her younger face, bearing the unmistakable star-shaped mark of a Saintess candidate. She realizes with dawning horror that she has returned to the very beginning. Touching the star-shaped mark, Elena realizes her horrifying memories are real. She clearly remembers the moment Ferris ended her life during the sacred ritual. Something impossible happened, and she doesn't know if this second chance is a punishment or an act of mercy. But her path is clear. She thinks of the kind, smiling boy Ferris once was, a debt she never repaid. This time, things will be different. With a fire of determination in her eyes, Elena makes a vow. She will change his tragic destiny for sure. A magnificent carriage rolls to a stop. It's the High Priest. Inside, an aide frets about choosing a commoner Saintess candidate. What if she becomes the Empress? The High Priest scoffs at his worries. He's tired of dealing with worldly, noble girls. He declares that a commoner is better. They can be educated without issue. With a chilling smile, he reveals his true intentions. A commoner is also easily replaced. Back in her room, Elena relives a horrifying memory. She remembers her mother grabbing her hair, confirming that this is the day she was sold. Elena knows that simply repeating the past is meaningless. She clenches her fists, vowing to become strong enough to secure her position and protect Ferris. Just as she steals her resolve, her mother shoves her from behind, yelling at her to greet the High Priest. He's here. But instead of the scared, timid girl from before, a completely different Elena faces him. With a calm smile, she introduces herself and says it is an honor to meet him, leaving her aggressive mother completely stunned by her sudden composure. Despite her resolve, Elena's body trembles. She tells herself to calm down, but the High Priest suddenly closes the distance, grabbing her chin with a chilling intensity. His eyes lock onto her throat as he mutters about that mark. Elena's mind races. Why is he so fixated on the star symbol? A terrifying possibility hits her. Could he have also traveled back in time? Before she can react, he beams, declaring that she bears the holy mark. He exclaims that this is proof she is a true Saintess, leaving Elena utterly bewildered. A chilling grin spreads across the High Priest's face. He declares that with this holy mark, the petty power struggles in the temple will finally end. There's no need for other Saintess candidates now. This revelation floors Elena. She remembers her past life, where those same disputes led to candidates being quietly removed from the running. She only became the Saintess because she survived by default. But now, she's being welcomed from the very beginning. As he tells her it's time to go, Elena is left utterly bewildered by this massive twist of fate. Word of a true Saintess bearing the legendary holy mark spreads like wildfire through the temple, sending the other factions into a panic. Elena overhears the whispers, but stays silent. This unexpected power is exactly what she needs to save Ferris. She is then escorted to an unbelievably lavish room, the official Saintess's chamber. A chill runs down her spine as she recognizes it. This is the same room she stayed in before her tragic end. A dark, bloody memory flashes in her mind, and she swears she will absolutely prevent that future this time. Elena steels her resolve, a fire igniting in her eyes. This is her second life, and she now has two powerful weapons, her memories of the future and the undeniable title of Saintess. Playing the part of a graceful holy maiden, she thanks the High Priest and vows to fulfill her duties. But inside, her true mission is clear. This time, she will absolutely protect Ferris. A week passes, but she can't find him anywhere. A horrifying thought strikes her as she lies in the garden. At this point in time, Ferris was enslaved by the temple. Elena realizes the crushing reality of her new position. As the official Saintess, she now lives in an exclusive sanctuary, a place where slaves are absolutely forbidden. In her previous life, she was just a candidate living in the general area, which is how she met Ferris. A memory floods her mind. A young, worried Ferris finding her bruised in the garden. He gently asked if the High Priest had hurt her again. Even then, she cared more for his wounds than her own, but he simply told her that her kindness was all he needed. Lying in the garden, Elena remembers this was once their secret sanctuary. Now it's just empty. Her eyes land on an old water jug, and a painful memory surfaces. In her past life, Ferris was punished harshly after breaking one, left shivering in the cold. Back then, she had found him and wrapped him in a blanket. He'd leaned against her, confessing that just being with her made him forget the pain. She had blushed, trying to downplay her kindness, but he insisted her compassion was all he ever needed. A figure appears carrying a heavy water jug, explaining he saw someone go into the forest and came to check. Elena's world stops. It's Ferris. She almost says his name but stops herself, remembering they're strangers in this life. Her mind floods with unspoken words. How much she missed him, how sorry she was. She can't say any of it. Instead, she makes a new, silent promise. This time, she will protect him. Steeling her nerves, she gathers the courage to finally speak to the man she loves. Elena finally works up the courage to speak, but when she lifts her head, he's gone. He's simply vanished. Stunned, she pushes through the bushes, whispering his name. Suddenly, a painful memory floods her mind. She sees him again in her past life, kneeling amidst the shards of a broken water jug. A cruel man loomed over him, raising a strap with a twisted grin on his face. The image of Ferris's pained but unbroken expression burns into her memory, and his name escapes her lips as a silent vow. Elena's heart hammers in her chest as the painful memory comes crashing back. She sees it all so clearly. Ferris kneeling on the ground amidst the shards of a broken water jar. A cruel overseer stood over him, raising a strap with a wicked grin. From a window, her younger self could only watch, frozen in horror. The man shouted that Ferris was useless trash for breaking the jar, that his mistake would make the overseer look bad. As the strap came whistling down, Elena's mind snapped back to the present, horrified. The overseer's cruelty didn't stop. He dumped a whole jug of freezing water over Ferris's head, ordering him to stay outside all night. With a wicked smile, he said he'd check in the morning to see if the boy was still alive. From a window, a young Elena watched in absolute horror, knowing he wouldn't survive the cold. As two men nearby callously bet on his life, she made a decision. Ignoring the warnings, she found him shivering in the rain and offered a small bit of warmth, her eyes welling with tears. Elena recalled how powerless she was back then, only able to do small things. But she couldn't just watch. As the overseer raised another heavy jug, she shouted for him to stop, shielding Ferris with her own body. A wave of freezing water crashed over her. Stunned, Ferris stared up at his sudden protector. The enraged man demanded to know who she was. With a trembling voice, Elena declared herself the saint, the one chosen by the high priest. She then informed the man she knew the truth. Ferris was only helping someone else. Putting on a holy act, Elena clasps her hands and declares that punishing Ferris so harshly goes against God's will. The overseer is completely stunned. Internally, Elena vows she will not lose Ferris again or let him become a monster consumed by vengeance. She turns to the boy, who can only stare in disbelief. Offering a hand, she gently tells him to come to her room so she can treat his wounds. But Ferris pulls back, humbly insisting that he's fine and not worth troubling the saint over. Elena's determined gaze shows she isn't asking. Elena tightened her grip, telling Ferris that pain still hurts, regardless of who you are. She had decided she would not let him be alone anymore. But as she tried to lead him away, the overseer rushed forward, screaming that a lowly slave had no place near the saint. Elena calmly corrected him, stating that before anything else, Ferris was an injured person. When the man threatened to report her to the high priest, Elena offered a chillingly sweet smile. She suggested they keep this a secret, otherwise she might accidentally mention who threw water on the new saint. The overseer was left speechless. Safely in her room, Elena began treating Ferris's injuries, softly saying she was just glad she got him out of there. Visibly flustered, Ferris reminded her that saints weren't supposed to get friendly with slaves. Elena admitted he was right, but she couldn't just ignore someone who was hurt. Relenting, he agreed to let her treat the wounds that could be hidden by his clothes. As her hand held his, she realized he only knew her as the saint. Their status was different now, but she vowed they would redo their days together. As a memory of a happier time flashed through her mind, Elena decided to close the distance between them. She told him her name was Elena, admitting that at the temple, no one ever called her by it. She then softly asked for his name in return. Blushing, the boy hesitantly answered, Ferris, before quickly correcting himself and calling her saint. Ignoring his formality, Elena smiled gently and told him it was a nice name. She was redoing her life, and this time, she was in a much better position to save him. Elena resolved to get closer to Ferris, but he was a total brick wall. Every time she tried to change his bandages or offer help with his chores, he coldly dismissed her, insisting it wasn't necessary. After days of being shut down, she finally found him locked away in a dark storage room. Ferris demanded to know if she truly understood the consequences of a Saintess getting friendly with a slave. With a somber expression, Elena confirmed that she did, a memory of a time they shared long ago flashing through her mind. Elena noted that among all the slaves, Ferris was treated especially badly. Remembering how he once supported her, she was now determined to be the one to help him. Ferris warned her not to say such things, but Elena pleaded with him to let her treat his wounds, insisting it was for her sake as well. Completely thrown off by her emotional plea, a blushing Ferris reluctantly gave in, telling her to do as she liked. Breaking the awkward silence, she then offered him the lunch she'd brought along with her. After their shared meal, Elena was praying alone in the grand hall when the high priest appeared. Finding her, he called out her title, his voice echoing in the empty space. But when Elena turned to greet him, his friendly demeanor had vanished. His face contorted with cold fury as he suddenly gripped her chin, forcing her to look at him. With a dangerously low voice, he demanded to know if the rumors were true, that she, a Saintess candidate, had been associating with a worthless slave. His menacing aura filled the room. Elena's mind raced. He was talking about Ferris. The high priest's face twisted in disgust. He believed the Saintess was a holy gift granted to him, and he couldn't forgive this transgression. How could she allow herself to be defiled by, of all people, a common slave? Consumed by a possessive rage, he violently shoved her away from him. Elena slammed onto the cold, hard floor. Staring at what he'd just done, the high priest's own eyes widened in a moment of stunned disbelief. As Elena hits the ground, her mind races. The high priest must have seen her with Ferris. But she's confused. This vicious rumor never existed in her past life. It clicks in a horrifying moment of clarity. Because she's the confirmed Saintess this time, she has enemies. The other jealous noble girls, desperate for her position, are the ones spreading these lies. A wave of regret washes over her. Ferris explicitly warned her about this, but she didn't listen, and now he's caught in the crossfire because of her actions. Snapping back to his senses, the high priest stammers out an apology, shocked by his own aggression. But Elena doesn't cower. She gets up and confronts him directly, admitting she met with a slave. She explains she was simply helping someone who was being mistreated and swears on her holy mark that the rumors are false. To prove her sincerity, she makes a divine vow. If she's lying, she tells God to take her life and choose a new Saintess. It's a huge gamble to clear her name and protect Ferris. As Elena makes her divine vow, a brilliant light suddenly erupts from her body, bathing the entire chamber in a holy glow. The high priest and the other clergy members stare in absolute shock. This is undeniable proof of God's favor. Forced to concede, the high priest admits that God has sided with her. Still, he declares that her actions were inexcusable. As atonement, she must undergo a rite of purification. Elena agrees immediately, relieved that this punishment will draw all unwanted attention away from Ferris, keeping him safe from the fallout. As Elena is led away, the other clergy members begin to whisper nervously. They know this so-called purification is just brutal, cold water training that could easily be fatal. But the high priest isn't concerned, he's smug. He believes if Elena is the true Saintess, she'll survive, and her success will crush the ambitions of the other noble candidates. From the shadows, Ferris watches silently as Elena is brought before a freezing pool. She finally understands this isn't just a punishment. It's a ruthless political test to solidify her status and his power. Despite a clergyman's plea to stop, Elena steps into the freezing water without a second thought. She reflects that Ferris was almost put in danger because of her, and she prays her gamble was enough to protect him. Sinking beneath the surface, she makes a new promise. His safety is now her only priority, even if it means they can't be close like before. A sweet memory surfaces, a younger Ferris showing her herbs from a book, insisting she use them first because he was tough and a scar would be a problem for her. The memory shifts to a warm, sunlit field where a younger Elena and Ferris are gathering herbs. After she reminds him to be gentle with the plants, he suddenly vanishes. She calls out his name, only for him to reappear moments later, blushing and holding a beautiful bouquet of white lilies. He nervously explains that they're a special flower brides wear to ensure a long and happy life together. Stunned by the deeply romantic gesture, Elena's heart races as she wonders if this is his way of making a promise for their future. Ferris blushes, admitting he'd be happy if she took the flowers as a promise for their future. Overjoyed, Elena agrees, and he pulls her into a warm embrace. But this perfect moment is shattered by a far darker memory. The lilies are thrown to the ground and crushed under a boot as a voice screams at Ferris, calling him worthless trash. Elena sees him on the floor, beaten and bloody. She runs forward in a panic, desperately begging the high priest to make the men stop hurting him. As the high priest holds her back, Elena desperately defends Ferris, insisting he'd only given her a flower. But the priest is unmoved, declaring her just as guilty for accepting the romantic gesture. He sneers that the punishments so far aren't nearly enough. From the ground, a bruised Ferris warns them not to touch her, offering to take the full punishment himself. Elena screams his name in horror. This single event led to his exile, and she didn't know if he was alive until her wedding day. Back in the present, she realizes their relationship is completely different now. Standing alone by the fire, Elena accepts a painful truth. In this timeline, she's the only one in love. Heartbroken, she considers a devastating possibility. Maybe she should just stop seeing Ferris completely. If he can be happy far away from her, then that has to be enough. Suddenly, a noise snaps her out of her thoughts. She turns to see Ferris standing right there. He's holding a bouquet of white lilies, the very same flowers that caused his ruin in her past life. Her mind reels, desperately questioning why he would bring her that exact flower now. Elena's world grinds to a halt. That specific flower was a painful memory, a bloom that should never have appeared in this second chance. Her mind reels, desperately questioning why he's holding it now. He shouldn't have feelings for her in this life. Ferris breaks the silence, calmly explaining he heard her ordeal was over. But that answer isn't enough. Why would he risk so much just to see her? Her eyes fixate on the bouquet, searching for a clue to his real intentions. Ferris holds out the lilies, asking if she'll accept them. He says if she doesn't want them, she can just throw them into the fire. But Elena hesitates. He was the one who first told her what these flowers meant. She asks if he really came all this way just for her. Ferris apologizes for trespassing, admitting he was worried. Elena tells him to leave before he's found. But as she turns, his hand gently touches her hair. He points out that it's still wet, concerned she'll catch a cold, leaving Elena completely flustered. Totally flustered by his concern, Elena insists she'll dry her hair later. His sudden kindness startles her, and she can't make sense of it. He's never acted this way before. He's always been cold and distant. They aren't even close enough to call each other friends. Could he just be worried, as an acquaintance? But then her eyes land on the lilies again. Ferris knows exactly what those flowers mean. No one would go this far for someone they barely know. Her firm resolve not to hope for more begins to crack. Elena feels like fate itself is testing her, pushing her resolve to its absolute limit. Just as she starts to hope again, a deafening crash shatters the moment as a tray clatters to the floor. They both turn to see another woman standing in the doorway, completely stunned. Her eyes land on Ferris, and she recoils, recognizing his low status. A cold dread washes over Elena. This is the worst-case scenario. Before she can even tell him to run, the woman screams for the guards, announcing an intruder is in the Saintess's room. They're caught. The guards burst in, and the high priest appears, his voice seething. He calls Ferris a slave, reminding him he was let off once before. Grabbing Ferris by the hair, he forces him to his knees in a display of power. Elena is restrained, screaming for them to stop, insisting Ferris is innocent. Her heart breaks, no matter her choices. Is the outcome always the same? Her desperation doesn't go unnoticed. The high priest looks on coldly, pointing out how intimately she speaks a slave's name, his suspicion growing with every passing second. The high priest's face twists with absolute disgust. He's convinced Ferris has tainted the holy Saintess, a sin beyond any purification. The other clergy members press in on Elena, telling her she's the victim and that she must punish the slave who dared to touch her. The high priest offers a chilling ultimatum: punish Ferris, and God might forgive her transgression. Desperate, Elena screams that he's innocent, but they ignore her. A cold dread washes over her as she realizes it's all happening again. The same horrible destiny is unfolding right before her eyes. Elena's mind races. Because of her new position, Ferris's punishment could be far worse than simple exile. She resolves that she will never hurt him again. Realizing the only thing scarier than defying the high priest is losing Ferris, she finds her strength. In a shocking display of defiance, she lets her robe slip from her shoulder. With a steady voice, she challenges the stunned clergy. If they truly doubt her, then they should examine her purity for themselves. The entire room is left speechless by her audacious gambit. Elena's bold gamble backfires horribly. The clergyman smirks, calling her idea brilliant. They will examine her purity themselves. Two priests grab her, ignoring her desperate request for a female examiner. A wave of disgust washes over her. Just as they tell her to remove everything, Ferris explodes with rage, yelling at them not to touch her. With a surge of raw power, he breaks free and seizes one of the men holding Elena. The priest screams as Ferris glares, his voice dripping with venom as he calls him filth. Elena is completely stunned. Ferris just saved her. In her past life, she would have understood his actions, but now, they're practically strangers. It makes no sense. Still, he holds her with a familiar gentleness, shielding her protectively. She questions his motives, but shakes it off. She needs to get through this first. Just then, the high priest loses his mind. He points a shaking finger directly at Ferris, screaming in pure fury at the man who dared to interfere with the church's divine judgment. The high priest roars, questioning if Ferris actually thinks he can get away with harming a clergyman. Realizing she has to act now, Elena decides to make the ultimate gamble. She must use her authority as the true Saintess. A holy light fills the room as she announces a divine revelation from God. She declares that in response to his brave act, this very man, this so-called slave, is worthy to become the saint's husband. Ferris stares in utter disbelief, and the entire clergy is frozen in shock by her audacious proclamation. The high priest stammers in disbelief. The saint's husband? And a lowly slave, of all people? Hearing his disgust, Elena seizes the opportunity. With divine light surrounding her, she calmly agrees with him. She proclaims that it is precisely God's will to reward a man who risks his life without hesitation. Pressing her advantage, she declares that such a brave soul is destined to bring great fortune to the entire empire. With a determined smile, she looks directly at the stunned clergyman, ready to finalize her heavenly decree. Elena turns to the stunned clergyman, asking for his permission to carry out the mission God has given her. Internally, she knows this is a massive risk, but she's banking on one critical fact. Amidst all the schemes, the high priest is known for his genuine piety. She tells him that she is standing here now only because God answered his deep devotion. This puts him in a trap. If he denies her, he's denying his own faith. She knows he desperately wants to believe she's the true Saintess, meaning the gamble was always stacked in her favor. Blushing, Ferris awkwardly calls out to the saint. Noticing her thin clothes, he quickly takes off his shirt and hands it over, telling her to cover herself. A stunned Elena accepts it, whispering her thanks. She then apologizes for suddenly calling him her future husband, promising to find a way to undo it if he wishes. But Ferris cuts her off. He has just one question. Locking eyes with her, he asks if her grand proclamation was truly God's will, or if it was simply her own. He needs to know the truth. Stunned by his direct question, Elena hesitates. Why did he need to know? Taking a risk, she turns the question back on him, asking what he would do if she admitted it was all her own will. To her surprise, a small smile plays on Ferris's lips as he leans closer. But before he can answer, the high priest interrupts. He declares that as the new saint, Elena's words must be tested to confirm if they are truly from the divine. The official verification process was about to begin, and there was no turning back now. The high priest delivers his verdict. Judgment for Ferris's unlawful entry will be put on hold, but he is to be confined to the prayer room for reflection. However, the priest issues a grave warning. If Elena has lied, divine punishment will fall. Ferris accepts this and allows himself to be led away. As Elena watches him go, she knows they aren't safe yet.
She's only bought a little time.
In a place as treacherous as the temple, her mission is clear. She has to get Ferris somewhere he can't be touched. As Ferris was led away, the high priest delivered a final, chilling threat. He warned him not to even think about running. If proof ever surfaced that Ferris had deceived the new saint, the priest swore he would deliver the punishment himself, long before God could. Alone in the prayer room, Ferris stared at a divine statue. He mused that God certainly had strange ways of doing things. Still, he couldn't get one thought out of his head. Despite everything, Elena chose him. He covered his face, a conflicted laugh escaping him as he wondered why she'd pick a slave with nothing. A memory from a past life resurfaced. As he lay dying, He looked at Elena and whispered her name, making a solemn vow for his next chance. Back in the present, the temple was in chaos. A frantic priest burst in, warning the high priest that Elena choosing anyone but the crown prince was unheard of and would surely cause a political disaster. The high priest, however, remained unfazed. He argued that the temple had always held the authority in this matter, and caving to the imperial family now would only show weakness. The other priests were in an absolute uproar. They couldn't believe the Saintess chose a slave. But the high priest saw things differently. He argued this was precisely why her oracle couldn't be ignored. Elena was a commoner sold by her parents. There was no way she could know who Ferris truly was. As others panicked about the crown prince's position, the high priest shut them down. He declared that God's will is beyond human understanding. The imperial family might hold worldly power, but the temple's sacred authority was absolute. The high priest smirked, realizing the game had changed. He believed the arrival of the true Saintess meant the world itself was about to be turned upside down. For a moment, he imagined the temple becoming the empire's true pillar of power, but quickly reined in his ambition, knowing it was too soon to tell. A few days later, Elena arrived at the temple. She informed the guards that she was there to see Ferris and had the high priest's permission. After being granted entry, she walked into the grand hall where Ferris was waiting. He looked up, surprised to see her. Elena nervously explained she was there to return the clothes she borrowed and to check on him. Internally, she steeled herself. With the high priest still undecided, this was her chance. She didn't care what happened to her. She would protect Ferris at any cost. Ferris thanked her, but then cut right through the small talk. He told her to skip the preamble, pointing out that her expression gave her away. He could tell she had something important to say. But when he pressed her, Elena hesitated, simply saying no. As Elena looked out over the city, she knew that just dealing with the immediate problems wouldn't fix the root cause. Her ultimate goal was to protect Ferris, and to do that, she had to get him out of the temple, even if it was a reckless move. She understood the political game at play. The high priest saw value in Ferris and was using him in the power struggle against the imperial family. Suddenly, an idea struck her. She could use the high priest's own ambition against him. That was it. She finally had a plan. With her new strategy in mind, Elena went straight to the high priest. He was surprised by her visit, asking what business the true Saintess had with him. Playing her part perfectly, Elena announced she was there to deliver a message from God himself. She started by flattering the man, claiming his own deep faith was the reason she was discovered. Then, she delivered the hook. God wanted the temple's glory to be revealed to the imperial family right away. She was feeding directly into his ambition, and he was clearly intrigued. Elena boldly proclaimed that this was the will of God. As proof, she offered a prophecy. A comet would streak across the eastern sky at dawn, its trail lingering as a sign. This event would mark the official reveal of the true Saintess. The high priest, shocked, stammered, asking if this was a real prophecy. Internally, Elena knew it was just a memory from her past life, but it was the perfect hook. Seeing his own ambition reflected in her words, the high priest's skepticism melted away, a cunning smile spreading across his face. He was convinced. The high priest's eyes gleamed with ambition. He told Elena her prophecy would silence all their doubters for good. Once she was proven to be the true Saintess, everyone would have to bow before her, even the emperor himself. He then revealed the source of his power with a quick history lesson. Ages ago, the temple's island and the empire were separate nations. But while the island thrived, the empire was ravaged by natural disasters. Their salvation only came when their emperor welcomed the Saintess as his empress, establishing her divine authority over the throne forever. The high priest continued, explaining the empire's golden rule. To ensure peace, the empress must be a saintess. He spoke of legends, how the first saintess's immense power shattered, scattering across the world. Only the true bearer of the sacred mark could channel this divine guidance. Playing right into his ego, Elena declared that it was precisely his deep faith that allowed her to be discovered. The flattery worked perfectly. As he mused that her reveal would be interesting, Elena stated she had one condition before leaving the temple. Elena then stated her one condition. She wanted Ferris to leave the temple with her. The high priest scoffed, dismissively calling Ferris that slave. He reminded her that the temple was full of Imperial agents, a dangerous place where conflicting interests could get someone permanently removed from the picture. After a tense moment, he agreed to consider her request. However, he gave her a stern warning. She must not do anything that would tarnish her sacred position. Elena, completely unfazed, calmly told him to rest assured. A divine voice seemed to whisper to Elena, confirming that God's was truly with her. Several weeks later, her prophecy came true. A spectacular comet blazed across the sky, a brilliant streak of light that left the entire empire in awe. This was the moment Elena had been waiting for. She knew the deeply religious high priest would see this as an undeniable sign from the heavens. With his faith completely solidified, he began to make arrangements for her grand unveiling, just as she had planned all along. Elena knew the high priest had his own schemes, but she couldn't care less. All that mattered was getting Ferris out of the temple. Later, she brought him a meal, and as he ate, she made a startling promise. She told him that soon, he would leave this place with her and travel to the imperial capital. Ferris was completely thrown, asking what she meant. Elena explained her plan. The high priest would be leaving to accompany her for her grand unveiling. Because of this, it was far too dangerous to leave Ferris behind. Elena laid out the next part of her plan. She warned him that once their ship reached the mainland, a commotion would break out over a supposed escaped slave. She had already prepared for his freedom, sewing gemstones into a change of clothes to fund his new life. Ferris was floored, calling out her title in total disbelief. But Elena's gaze was firm. She gave him a single, chilling command. Run. Internally, she vowed that this time, he alone would not have to repeat a life drenched in conflict. Ferris was stunned by her declaration. Even if Elena was offering him a path to freedom, he flatly refused to be the only one saved. As Elena silently reaffirmed her vow to succeed this time, their journey began. Days later, on the deck of a grand ship cutting through the waves, a blonde nobleman watched the sky. With a slight smile, he announced it was time to set things in motion, all for the sake of their mysterious prince. A new, powerful figure had just entered the stage. The day of departure had finally arrived. Elena was on her way to the imperial capital to be officially presented as the Saintess. As she walked through the bustling port, flanked by the high priest and his retinue, her mind was on one thing only. Opportunities to leave the heavily guarded Temple Island were incredibly rare. This was her one shot to get Ferris out. Stealing her gaze, Elena made a solemn vow. She would secure his freedom on this journey, even if it meant sacrificing her own life to do it. As their ship cut through the water, nearing the imperial capital, an attendant urged Elena to prepare for their arrival. Elena agreed, but made a bold request. She needed to see Ferris. The attendant hesitated, but the Saintess was resolute. She calmly explained that they were surrounded by sea, leaving no possibility for escape. With a firm gaze, Elena insisted on confirming his safety with her own eyes. She had to be sure he was okay before setting her dangerous plan into motion on the mainland, where anything could happen. Elena found Ferris sitting alone in the dark. She softly asked if he was all right. His reply dripped with sarcasm, claiming he was fine as long as he had this Saintess protection. Understanding his bitterness, Elena knelt before him. She told him it was time for her final blessing. Her plan was simple. When the ship docked, he had to use the commotion to escape and not look back. To create that very chaos, Elena then threw herself from the deck of the ship, plunging into the cold sea below. Sensing her resolve, Ferris's eyes narrowed. He demanded to know what she was planning to do. Her silence was all the answer he needed. In a swift motion, he pulled Elena into a fierce embrace, his grip tight. He made a vow of his own, telling her that no matter what she tried, he would ensure she survived. Before Elena could react, he shoved her away. In that same instant, a powerful crack echoed through the room as Ferris shattered the magical restraints that bound him. He was taking matters into his own hands. Attendants grabbed Elena, pulling her back from the door as she begged them to let her go. She just needed a little more time to talk to Ferris. But a cleric gave her a cold ultimatum. If her commotion reached the high priest's ears, Ferris would be thrown into the sea. The threat landed, and Elena fell silent, saying she understood. But in her mind, she resolved that she wouldn't let that happen. Suddenly, a massive blast of purple energy erupted from the room, sending everyone flying. Elena was knocked to the floor, stunned and confused by the sudden chaos. Amid the chaos, a lookout screamed in terror. A pirate ship had emerged, cannons already firing upon their vessel. The attendants panicked, grabbing Elena and urging her to get to the escort ship. But she stopped dead in her tracks, shouting that Ferris was still locked in the hold below. If the ship went down, he would be trapped. As she stared in horror, a serene voice cut through the pandemonium. The high priest stood before her, calmly remarking that he had finally found her in such a place. The high priest insisted Elena move to another ship, but she tried to protest. Before she could finish, one of his men delivered a swift strike to the back of her neck, and her world went dark. With Elena unconscious, the priest coldly ordered his men to take her away. An attendant then asked about Ferris. The high priest revealed his sinister plan. If Ferris perishes in a maritime accident the Saintess is unaware of, then so be it. This entire incident, he declared, must be kept hidden from the Imperial family. Carrying the unconscious Elena, the high priest reveled in his twisted logic. The Saintess's authority, he declared, must be protected at all costs. This pirate attack was a divine sign, a convenient way to get rid of anyone who could bring shame to her. Even if they had value, like Ferris, they were ultimately disposable. This whole disaster was simply proof of his own unwavering faith. Meanwhile, trapped in the dark hold below, Ferris's head shot up. He could feel the ship groaning around him, sensing the imminent danger. Elena's eyes fly open as she jerks awake. An attendant informs her they've safely reached the escort ship. But before she can even process his words, a massive explosion rips across the water. The ship she was just on, the ship holding Ferris, is engulfed in a blazing inferno. Panic grips her instantly. She struggles against the attendant's hold, screaming for them to let her go. Her desperate cries for Ferris are lost in the chaos. Unmoved, the high priest watches the destruction, coldly satisfied that the man chosen to be the Saintess's husband is gone. The high priest's cruel words cut through her grief. He taunted her, asking why God hadn't saved Ferris if her choice was truly the right one. His question shattered Elena's remaining hope, and she collapsed onto the deck. Strength completely abandoned her. A terrible thought filled her mind. Was this all a punishment for pretending to be a saintess? In a flash of agonizing clarity, she realized the roles had been reversed. In this new life, she was supposed to be the one to perish, while Ferris was the one meant to survive. The vessel carrying Ferris was torn apart by an unseen force, sinking quickly into the dark, cold depths. In her tormented dreams, Elena screamed his name, reaching for a man she could never touch. This was all wrong. She was the one who was supposed to die, not him. This horrifying thought replayed endlessly as she thrashed in her bed, trapped in a nightmare. Even in sleep, there was no escape from the agony of watching him perish all over again, consumed by the unforgiving sea. Elena bolts upright in bed, the phantom scream for Ferris still on her lips. It's all a dream, a cruel memory. She recalls her original, desperate plan from 5 years ago. She was going to fake her own demise, creating a chaotic diversion for Ferris to escape his chains and the temple for good. She didn't care if she had to perish to see him free. But destiny twisted her sacrifice. He was gone, and she was left with the agonizing question, why was she the one who survived? It should have been her. A memory flashes through Elena's mind, Ferris holding her tight, promising he would make sure she lived. His name escapes her lips like a prayer. Back in the present, she stares out the window, lost in thought. His vow is the only thing that has kept her going, the one reason she hasn't completely broken down. Suddenly, a voice calls her name, startling her. She turns to see the crown prince, Ilias, standing before her. He wishes her a good morning, and all she can do is stare, utterly surprised by his presence. Still reeling, Elena demands to know why the crown prince is here. Ilias just smiles, telling her to drop the formal titles and call him by his name. He then lays his cards on the table, declaring that as the imperial heir, he's the most suitable man to be her husband. Elena remains silent, her expression unreadable. He calls her the saint who never smiles, acknowledging the deep trauma she suffered 5 years ago. He promises to wait for her feelings to change, but his actions betray his impatience as he takes and kisses her hand, confessing his love. Prince Ilias leans in, explaining he knows she'll be traveling soon and just wants to share one breakfast with her. Elena reluctantly agrees, but He quickly corrects her, insisting she use his name. With a confident smirk, he tells her to dress up nicely for him and heads off to wait. The moment he's out of her sight, his charming demeanor vanishes. He coldly orders a maid to see to Saint Elena's preparations, noting that he's aware she's been having bad dreams again. His words are calm, but his true intentions feel deeply unsettling. As Prince Ilias walks away, an aide rushes to his side with a letter. The temple on the Holy Island is protesting, outraged that the Saintess is being sent on a journey without their permission. But Ilias is unbothered. He argues that the people are excited to finally see her. He reveals his true motive. The temple kept her locked away for too long. By presenting her to the public under imperial protection, her popularity will soar, strengthening the royal family's influence. As for the high priest Laocoon's complaints, Ilias coldly instructs his aide to ignore them completely. Prince Ilias sneers, telling his aide the temple is powerless. He reminds him of the incident 5 years ago, where the church couldn't protect Elena. It was an imperial ship, not the clergy, that saved her from attackers. He declares that a church that fails its saint has no value, and he will make sure the entire empire understands this. The Saintess, he insists, belongs in the capital under the protection of the imperial family. His chilling smile reveals his true meaning. He plans to guard her like a precious object in a gilded cage. Prince Ilias puts on a perfect show for the public, wishing Elena safe travels. He smoothly declares that her blessings will soon fill the entire empire. Elena, however, remains silent, her expression unreadable as she departs. Alone in her carriage, her mind drifts back to the attack 5 years prior. The high priest had told everyone her divine protection drove off the assailants. But that was a lie. Elena knew the truth. The imperial family used the temple's failure as the perfect excuse to condemn them, positioning themselves to seize the empire's greatest treasure. The royal family used the temple's failure as the perfect excuse, claiming they couldn't leave a treasure like her unprotected. So for 5 years, Elena was confined to the capital under their watchful protection. Now, just like in her past life, her days are spent traveling and offering prayers to the people.
It's the only thing she has left.
A painful memory of Ferris flashes in her mind. She desperately wishes she could just go to him, but she recalls his words. Because of him, she can't choose death. She must keep living. Suddenly, the carriage lurches to a violent halt, throwing Elena from her thoughts. A guard screams from outside, desperately telling her to stay hidden. He shouts that bandits have appeared. Elena's eyes widen in pure terror as the grim memory of her last ambush flashes through her mind. The chaos and danger are all too familiar. Elsewhere, lurking in the shadows of a nearby forest, Ferris watches the scene unfold. He calmly notes that it has begun. With a single command to his men, he sets his own plan into motion. Chaos erupts as the guards clash violently with the masked assailants. The attackers shout their one clear goal: to capture the Saintess at all costs. Huddled inside the carriage, Elena is paralyzed by a horrifying sense of déjà vu. This is just like the attack 5 years ago, the day she lost Ferris. For a desperate second, she thinks this might be her chance to finally join him. But then, his voice echoes in her memory, his promise from the past cutting through her despair. He swore he would make sure she lived. Elena whispers Ferris's name, caught in a painful memory. He once told her that his life had no meaning if he couldn't save her. Because of his words, she can't give up, feeling that even wishing for an end would betray his sacrifice. A happier memory surfaces, a time when she was truly joyful with him, reminding her that without him, her world is empty. Suddenly, a heavy thud shakes the carriage as a swordsman lands on the roof. The violent jolt throws Elena off balance, forcing a pained gasp from her lips. The masked swordsman lands atop the carriage, raising his weapon and ordering Elena not to move. He begins to laugh, gloating that their mission is almost complete. Suddenly, his words are cut short as a second blade slices through the air. In a flash, a dark-haired man appears and effortlessly dispatches the attacker. The mysterious figure looks down at his fallen foe and icily tells him to get lost. Elena stares up from inside the carriage, her eyes wide with shock and confusion as she recognizes her unexpected savior. Elena stares in disbelief, her voice a choked whisper as she says his name. It's Ferris. He stands before her, covered in the aftermath of the fight, his golden eyes fixed on her. Suddenly, His expression shifts as a ghostly female figure materializes behind him with a faint, chilling laugh. An overwhelming power surges from Elena, her vision going dark as she collapses. Ferris rushes forward, catching her in his arms. The ethereal being looks on, calmly announcing that the Saintess has finally returned to where she belongs. As Ferris holds the unconscious Elena, the ghostly figure declares that she has returned to her fate. In a strange dreamscape, the spirit touches a mark on Elena's neck. She remarks that just as she expected, Elena can't synchronize with her power. Despite this, she insists that Elena must stay alive for the sake of something. With that cryptic command, Elena's eyes snap open. She jolts awake in an unfamiliar bed, gasping for air and completely bewildered by her new surroundings. Elena coughs, abruptly sitting up in the unfamiliar bed. She wonders what just happened, trying to dismiss the strange vision as a dream. But a familiar, suffocating feeling returns, a pressure on her throat that always makes her feel like a fake Saintess. She knows this feeling began after she lost Ferris in her previous life. Suddenly, her memories snap into focus. The man who just saved her, there's no way she could mistake him. It was definitely Ferris. Her mind races, grappling with the impossible truth. It hits Elena all at once. Ferris saved her. She takes in her surroundings, recognizing the distinct look of a military encampment. He must have brought her here. Overwhelmed by the need to see him, she throws off the covers and rushes for the tense exit. She yanks the flap open, nearly running into a man who tells her to be careful. Frantically, Elena insists she has to find someone. He calmly reassures her that her companions are safe, then asks if their survival is thanks to her protective power. The man says it's no surprise, recognizing her as the true Saintess, Elena. He introduces himself as Hector, the vice leader of the mercenary group Tartarus. He explains that under their commander's orders, they rushed to her aid when her procession was attacked by bandits. The name Tartarus hits Elena hard. She's definitely heard of them. In an empire torn by constant conflict, they are known as the strongest mercenaries on any battlefield. They are a legendary group so fierce, it's said they are feared even by death itself. Hector seems honored that the Saintess has even heard of them. But Elena isn't here for small talk. She cuts straight to the point, asking if a man named Ferris is in their group. She explains that he's extremely important to her and that he was the one who saved her during the attack. Hector clarifies that the person who saved her was indeed their commander. But he drops a bombshell. The commander's name is Tartarus. Elena is completely baffled, saying that's the name of the mercenary group itself. Hector's answer is chilling. They are merely the limbs, and Tartarus is the name of their king. Hector explains that Tartarus is more than a name, it's a title they all bear as wanderers. But Elena isn't processing his words. Her mind is stuck on one undeniable fact. The man who saved her looked exactly like Ferris. She immediately pleads with Hector to let her meet the commander, insisting she needs to thank him. Hector smiles and agrees. Just then, a powerful figure approaches them. Elena's breath catches in her throat. It's him, the man from her past life, the one she came back to save. It's Ferris, and he is the commander of Tartarus. A vision of Ferris, the man from her tragic past, flashes before her eyes. But he's no longer just a memory. He's standing right there, the imposing commander of Tartarus. Elena stares in disbelief, hesitantly whispering his name. In that moment, all the confusion about his title vanishes, completely overshadowed by overwhelming relief. Tears of joy fill her eyes as she cries out his name, ecstatic. She can't believe it's really him. The man she came back to save is alive, standing right in front of her. Overcome with emotion, Elena tearfully cries out how relieved she is that he's safe. But before she can reach him, another mercenary suddenly forces Ferris down onto one knee. The man declares that this is the proper way to greet Elena, the true saint. Looking up from the ground, Ferris formally tells the stunned Saintess that he was honored to have saved her. Elena is completely speechless, a single tear rolling down her cheek as she stares at the man she came back for, now kneeling at her feet. The man explains he's just the captain of a wandering mercenary group. Elena's hope begins to falter as she hesitantly asks if he's Ferris. But he looks back with total confusion, asking who she's talking about. His clueless response sends a shockwave through her. A devastating memory surfaces, the rumors from her past life that Ferris had been lost at sea. The crushing truth sinks in. This man looks exactly like the one she loved, but he isn't him. Tears stream down her face as her brief moment of joy shatters into despair. Tears stream down Elena's face as the mercenary captain asks who Ferris is. With a trembling voice, she explains that he is someone incredibly important to her. Seeing her distress, the man gently wipes a tear from her cheek, noting that she's crying. He then questions if Ferris is simply a man from her past. This strikes a nerve. Filled with sudden resolve, Elena grabs his hand with surprising strength, fiercely declaring that Ferris will never be just a memory to her. The mercenary captain suddenly pulls Elena close from behind, his arm locking around her waist. He coldly informs her that this is his camp, and he won't allow her to wander around freely. While she's completely flustered by the sudden contact, he lays down the rules. Once her grand carriage is repaired, he'll send her back to the Imperial Palace. Leaning in, he warns her to stay put and behave. He reminds her that even as the revered saint of the Empire, she would do well not to forget her place here. He hits her with a cold, hard truth, bluntly stating that there are people who curse her name. 2. Elena is left completely speechless, floored by his brutal honesty. Before she can respond, he and his companion turn their backs, leaving the Saintess standing alone. The scene then shifts to a grand building under the moonlight. Inside, the very same mercenary captain stands before the high priest himself, giving a report. It seems this simple mercenary has some seriously powerful connections he failed to mention. The high priest reviews a scroll, his expression turning to one of pure shock. He exclaims that the true saint, Elena, was attacked by bandits. An aide confirms the terrible news is correct. Cutting to the chase, the high priest urgently asks if she is safe. According to the report, she was indeed saved, but by a mercenary group called Tartarus. As the name hangs in the air, a vision of the dark-clad mercenaries and their imposing leader flashes by, hinting at the dangerous company the Saintess now keeps. The high priest is furious, muttering about the filthy wretches who dared attack the Saintess. His anger quickly cools into a somber resignation, wondering if this, too, is God's will. A confused aide asks what he could possibly mean. The high priest explains the difficult political situation. He reminds them that the temple already lost custody of the Saintess to the Imperial House after a past pirate attack. The royals used that failure as an excuse, claiming the temple was too incompetent to guarantee her safety. This new incident only weakens their position further. The high priest is absolutely livid. He reminds his aides that the Imperial House sent guards, but they were completely useless against the bandits. Seething with rage, he declares that the royals have also failed spectacularly. They have no right to claim they can protect the Saintess after this. His subordinates finally understand the gravity of the situation. The high priest's anger cools into steely resolve. He orders his men to prepare for a sea journey, announcing with grim determination that he will travel to the imperial capital himself. His aides immediately acknowledged his command. As the men left to prepare, the high priest's true intention surfaced. His hands tightened on the scroll as he thought of Elena, the true saint. A sinister smile crossed his face as he vowed to return her to where she truly belonged. In his mind, the Saintess was a puppet, and he would be the one pulling the strings. He planned to use her to correct the world's distortions, ensuring the temple regained its proper authority over her and the empire. Back at the Grand Estate, Elena turns to her 2 bodyguards and sincerely thanks them for the safe escort. She promises that the imperial family will surely praise Tartarus for their flawless work. But a question hangs in the air. Where's their commander? The blonde mercenary, Pallas, happily clarifies their command structure. He explains that Tartarus is led by 1 leader and 2 vice leaders. To stay ready for anything, the 3 of them always operate separately, and this time, she got him and vice leader Hector. Elena processed this information, her mind lingering on the name Tartarus. They were known as mercenaries who didn't fear death, yet they were surprisingly cautious. Just then, the grand doors burst open as an aide excitedly announced the return of the true Saintess. Standing before them was Ilias, a noble figure who stared in complete shock. He cried out her name, his eyes wide with disbelief. Overcome with emotion, he rushed forward and pulled her into a tight hug, exclaiming with immense relief that he was thankful she was safe. Ilias confessed that he was beside himself with worry when he heard about the bandit attack. Trapped in his embrace, a flustered Elena begged him to let her go. But he held on tighter, wanting to savor the moment, much to the shock of the whispering onlookers. When she pleaded with him again, he finally released her, admitting he couldn't refuse her. Instead, Ilias smoothly changed his request, offering to escort her to the Holy Throne. Taking her by the hand, he guided her to the ornate seat with a soft smile. With Elena beside him, Ilias took a seat on the throne, looking down at the two mercenaries. He declared that the Saintess was the Empire's treasure and he intended to express his gratitude for her protection. He then demanded to know which of them was the leader of Tartarus. Hector and Pallas calmly replied that they were both vice leaders. It was a rule within their group that the leader always operated independently. Disappointed, Ilias called it a shame, as he wished to thank the person most responsible, but resolved to arrange another chance. Ilias then made a stunning declaration. He intended to grant the leader of Tartarus a noble's rank, an offer that naturally extended to the two vice leaders. Elena stared, completely shocked by the news. But Ilias wasn't finished. He promised to make the rest of Tartarus a knightly order serving directly under the crown prince. A stunned Hector argued that the reward was far too generous, but Ilias simply insisted they accept it. He explained that the empire was maintained by the union of the emperor and the Saintess, and he couldn't thank them enough. Hector promised to relay the generous offer to his leader, but he had one condition. Even if their leader accepted the title of nobility, the rest of Tartarus would only accept the rank of knights. Hector explained that as their leader's shield and sword, they couldn't possibly hold the same rank. Impressed by their loyalty, Ilias urged them to think it over and invited their leader to a celebratory banquet. Hector then asked for a place to rest, but Ilias stunned them by offering the entire detached palace for their use. But Hector shockingly rejected the offer of an entire palace. He calmly stated that a safe forest would be more than enough. Unfazed, Ilias countered by granting them access to the exclusive Imperial hunting grounds and promised to have supplies delivered. With a satisfied nod, Hector accepted. Their business now concluded, the two mercenaries turned and departed from the throne room. Ilias watched them go, completely fascinated by their unreadable nature. Elena was equally impressed, thinking how stoic they were to show absolutely no interest in the power and status of nobility. As the mercenaries departed, Elena was deeply suspicious of the crown prince's motives. Ilias was known for being a capable and friendly regent, but this level of generosity was unheard of. She knew he was no pushover, and his unusual kindness made her anxious. Tartarus had saved her life, and she desperately hoped they wouldn't get entangled in whatever political schemes the prince was plotting. Unbeknownst to her, a small smile played on Ilias's lips as he watched them go, thinking that they were as wary as wild animals. Ilias watched the mercenaries leave, quietly remarking that it would take some time to tame them. Elena overheard his chilling comment, her eyes widening in confusion. Noticing her stare, the prince's demeanor shifted instantly. With a charming smile, he told her to get some rest. He then invited her to a private meal, explaining he wanted to hear all about the terrifying incident she survived. More importantly, he wanted to know everything about Tartarus. Before Elena could react to his unsettling request, an attendant suddenly appeared with an urgent matter for the prince. The attendant rushed in, explaining to Ilias that news of the bandit attack had spread. He announced that important guests had arrived. Elena froze in her seat as the man specified it was the mercenaries who saved her and, to her absolute horror, the high priest from the Holy Island. Her plan to keep the two groups separate was already falling apart. While Elena was gripped by dread, Ilias looked delighted. With a sly smile, he remarked that it was shaping up to be a very lively banquet. As Prince Ilias guided Elena through the opulent hall, her mind was in turmoil. She couldn't understand why the high priest was at the imperial castle. Ilias was known to turn the man away unless it was a major issue, so his sudden invitation to a banquet felt deeply wrong. A terrifying memory of the priest's cruel gaze resurfaced, and a cold dread washed over her. The thought of facing him again was unbearable. Even if this new life was like being a bird in a cage, it was a cage she never wanted him to enter. A fleeting moment of relief washed over Elena. At least the high priest wasn't around yet. But her calm was shattered by a terrifying thought. What would happen when the high priest and the man she knew as Ferris finally met? Her mind raced with horrible possibilities. She was just a fake Saintess who had already failed to save him once. Despite the overwhelming dread, she couldn't stop herself from praying. She begged that this was all a huge mistake, and that the commander of Tartarus was truly her Ferris. Her breath caught in her throat. There he was. Ferris, the commander of Tartarus, stood across the hall dressed in a formal red uniform. He looked like a completely different person, radiating a noble aura that was even more eye-catching than the crown prince's. Just as she was reeling, an angry shout cut through the air. The high priest stormed into the room, furious that he was brought to a banquet for negotiations. With a cold smile, the priest finally addressed Ferris, and Elena's worst nightmare began to unfold before her very eyes. The high priest pointed an accusing finger at Prince Ilias, his voice booming with fury. He roared that the imperial family had failed to protect the Saintess and had no right to keep her. After using a bandit attack as an excuse to hold her in the capital, she was targeted again. He tried to pull Elena away, demanding she return to the temple. But Ilias simply smiled. He calmly interrupted, saying there was a good reason for her to stay. Raising his goblet, he announced that the ones who saved her were his knights. Prince Ilias dropped a bombshell, announcing that Ferris was now a noble and Tartarus served as his knights. This move meant the imperial family had, in fact, protected the Saintess perfectly. With a chilling smile, Ilias suggested the high priest return home. The priest was furious, sputtering that such tricks wouldn't work. But Elena was floored. She realized the prince's generosity was a calculated play to corner the temple. His constant smile suddenly seemed utterly terrifying, revealing a cold, unfathomable mind at work. This whole situation was his master plan. As the high priest stared at Ferris with a look of stunned disbelief, a shocking thought hit Elena. He saw it too. It wasn't just her imagination. The man named Tartarus really could be Ferris. Noticing her troubled expression, Prince Ilias asked if something was wrong. She quickly shook her head, saying it wasn't the right place to discuss it. Defeated, the high priest conceded that they should celebrate for now. With a victorious smirk, Ilias raised his glass high, proposing a toast to the imperial family's new knight, the hero Tartarus. The hall erupted in cheers. Prince Ilias privately expressed his satisfaction that Ferris had accepted the position of nobility. He admitted he was worried, noting that Ferris and his men seemed to lack any real ambition. The prince urged him to be greedier, especially after saving the true Saintess. Having already refused treasures and territories, Ilias pressed him to make a request. Ferris finally spoke, turning his gaze toward Elena. He didn't ask for land or riches. He demanded the right to the first dance. Elena stood completely stunned, while an amused Prince Ilias chuckled at being ignored by the hero. Prince Ilias left the choice to Elena, asking what she would do. Ignoring the prince entirely, Ferris simply extended his gloved hand. As Elena accepted, the crowd erupted in shocked whispers. The Saintess who never danced, not even with the crown prince, was on the floor. While they swayed to the music, Elena thanked him again for saving her. His large hands, the gentle warmth of his touch, and his soft gaze overwhelmed her senses. A tear escaped as she realized she couldn't see him as anyone but Ferris, the man she loved. Ferris gently touched her cheek, noting that she was crying again. He softly said it felt like he'd only ever seen her sad face. Overwhelmed, Elena apologized, confessing that he was the embodiment of her happiest dream, the version of Ferris who got to live and grow up properly. Understanding her pain, Ferris pulled her into a tight embrace, telling her to immerse herself in that dream, just for now. As Elena stood stunned in his arms, Prince Ilias watched them with a smirk, while the high priest looked on with a grave expression. The high priest watched them from afar, his expression cold and calculating. He didn't believe for a second that this mercenary was a stranger. Changing his name couldn't fool him. The priest's eyes never lied. He remembered that same greedy gaze from the past, the one filled with a desperate longing for the Saintess. The high priest knew the truth. Ferris bore an undeniable mark, a secret that sealed his fate. In the priest's mind, he envisioned Ferris not as a hero, but as a man entangled in a destiny of dark, thorny vines. Back at the mercenary camp, Ferris returned from the palace, shrugging off his formal jacket. Pallas greeted him, asking if anything had changed while he was away. With Lord Hector present, Pallas explained, they had even received extra supplies directly from the crown prince. He added that after the feast, everyone was now resting. But Ferris's mind was already on his next move. Buttoning up his shirt, He warned his comrade that the crown prince was not someone they could ever let their guard down around. His caution was absolute. Pallas worriedly asked if the supplies were poisoned, but Ferris assured him everything was taste-tested. Still, Pallas was shocked their mercenary group was now an official knight order. Ferris clarified it was just for appearances, allowing the royals to claim they were protecting the Saintess. He again warned his comrade to stay alert, as the prince was unpredictable. Pallas couldn't understand the prince's motive for wanting to turn them into nobles. Ferris revealed the endgame. If they all became nobles, they would be tied directly to the imperial family. Ferris continued, explaining the prince's endgame. By making them nobles, he could shatter Tartarus's entire command structure and destroy their order from the inside. Pallas grimly acknowledged what a crafty enemy they were facing. Ferris warned him to stay sharp. They couldn't afford to relax while in the capital. He reminded Pallas that their true mission had only just begun. But Pallas was worried too, telling his leader to be careful. He noticed how tense Ferris had been and insisted that he didn't need to be watched over. Sleep wouldn't come for Ferris, as visions of Elena flooded his mind. He remembered dancing with her, a hazy, dreamlike memory. Whispering her name, he recalled her sorrowful expression. It dawned on him that as the Saintess, she was trapped, forever forced to wear a mask of duty. His hand clenched into a tight fist. He swore to himself that this time would be different. This time, he would do things right, reclaim the pride of his bloodline, and absolutely succeed in his mission. Ferris lay awake, his eyes burning with resolve. He swore to himself that he would break Elena out of her gilded cage, no matter the cost. Suddenly, he jolted upright, thinking he heard a woman's voice, but quickly brushed it off as his imagination. Meanwhile, Elena was given some news. The man who always insisted on taking her back to the island was leaving. She found this deeply suspicious. Normally, he would never give up so easily, but this time he had yielded without a fight. His sudden change of heart felt completely wrong. Elena couldn't bring herself to meet the man's eyes, yet she was desperate to know more about Tartarus.
She wondered what the high priest really thought about him.
Later, sorting through offerings, she discovered a strange prayer book. She realized it was the high priest's personal copy and questioned why it was there. Deciding to return it, she opened the book, and a hidden note fluttered out. It bluntly stated that Ferris was the leader of Tartarus. The proof? A 5-pointed star on his chest. Elena stared in disbelief at the matching mark on her own skin. Ferris's eyes flew open. Someone was in his room. In a flash, he snatched the dagger from his bedside, demanding to know who was there. But the figure stepping from the shadows was the last person he expected, the high priest. The old man calmly told him to lower the weapon, assuring him he wasn't there to fight. Instead, he came with a shocking revelation. He knew everything, addressing the mercenary leader by his hidden, true identity, Prince Ferris. Ferris froze, his cover completely blown. A maid interrupts Elena's solitude, presenting an offering sent by the high priest. As she accepts it, the memory of Ferris's smile flashes in her mind. Is it really okay to believe he's alive? Inside the offering is a hidden memo. The note contains a shocking plan. If the crown prince proposes, she must declare Ferris as the man she will marry. It promises that the temple will honor the Saintess's choice. Elena is completely stunned. The high priest is giving her a way out and a path directly to Ferris. Elena stared at the note, her mind racing. Was the high priest serious about acknowledging Ferris and pushing for their marriage? The offer was a tempting one, but she couldn't shake her suspicion. She questioned his true motives, wondering if he was trying to trap her or simply use her as a pawn. Taking a moment to calm down, she hardened her resolve. She knew she was in his grasp and had to move carefully. This time, she wouldn't make the same mistake. If Tartarus was Ferris, she would protect him, even if it cost her everything. Elena's strategy began to form. First, she needed absolute proof that the mercenary leader Tartarus was Ferris. To get it, she had to find a way to move freely, away from the watchful eyes of Crown Prince Ilias. She was fully aware of his obsession and the terrifying side he hid from the world. If she had to, she would use it. The high priest was playing a dangerous game, but she would use him too. This time, she wasn't a pawn. With burning resolve, she declared she would protect Ferris, no matter what. Water splashes as Ferris, the leader of Tartarus, takes a moment of solitude. The The serene setting is broken by a flood of painful memories from his past. He recalls a woman, likely his mother, embracing him as a child. With a voice choked with sorrow, she begged him for forgiveness. Her tearful plea was simple. No matter how hard things got, he had to survive. She held on to him, promising that a day would come when he would finally be free from his cursed fate. This burden is what forged him. His mother's words echoed in his mind. She explained that the pentagram on his shoulder wasn't a curse, but a beacon of hope. It was a symbol for their oppressed people, the forgotten descendants of a fallen holy kingdom. He was their king, Tartarus. Her final, desperate wish was for him to be found by the true Saintess. The memory fades, and Ferris scoffs at the name Prince. He recalls the high priest's slippery offer to join forces, tempting him with the one thing he supposedly wanted back, the Saintess. Ferris scoffs at the title of Saintess. He remembers it not as a blessing, but as a curse that bound Elena and destroyed her spirit. The tragic end he brought upon her in their past life flashes through his mind. Overcome with anguish, he runs a hand through his hair and swears he will free her from that destiny. As he makes this vow, a radiant spirit appears in the water. She embraces him with a smile, whispering that she'll be waiting. At the palace, Prince Ilias learns the priests have left. Pleased, the fanatics are gone. Prince Ilias tells his aide he's acquired as a new dog that will take some time to tame. With a cold smile, he muses that if the dog can't be controlled, he'll simply dispose of it. He recalls how Ferris and his mercenary group, Tartarus, weren't swayed by rewards or status. They were surprisingly disciplined for a band of so-called barbarians. Ilias smirks, realizing they both desire the same thing. He sees them as a useful tool for now, but also a potential nuisance if they gain too much power. Prince Ilias muses that before they can get along, he'll need to test his new assets. Seeking a change of pace, he decides to visit Elena. She's shocked by his sudden late-night visit, but he insists he has urgent news. Taking her hand, the crown prince drops to one knee and formally asks for her hand in marriage. He declares their union is necessary for the empire's peace. Utterly stunned by the proposal, Elena can only stare in wide-eyed disbelief, questioning why this is happening. Prince Ilias lays out his reasoning, telling Elena he knows she's been trapped in sorrow since the bandit incident 5 years ago. He claims he's waited long enough and now worries someone else might take her from him. Insisting it's time for her to move on, he reminds her of the tradition. The one chosen by the Saintess becomes the emperor. He declares that the people want their union. Elena is frozen. She always knew this duty was inevitable, but the timing is cruel, right after learning Ferris might still be alive. As Ilias waits, Elena's mind spirals into the past. Her first thought is of Ferris. If he's alive, protecting him is her only mission, no matter the cost to herself. She remembers the last timeline with crushing guilt. Her love, her choice to make him her husband, was the very thing that led to his downfall. The memory of his suffering shatters her heart. She vows to atone for her mistake. This time, she will save him, even if they can never be together. Her silent promise is broken when Ilias asks for her answer. Steeling herself, Elena begins to give her answer, but stops cold. Her gaze falls upon an unusual mark on Prince Ilias's wrist. When she points it out, he simply smirks. He explains that according to legend, every member of the Imperial family is born with a pentagram somewhere on their body. Elena's mind reels. The high priest's letter had said the proof that Tartarus was Ferris was the pentagram on his chest. The shocking realization hits her like a physical blow. Oblivious to her internal crisis, Ilias asks if something is wrong. Struggling to process the new information, Elena stammers an apology and asks Prince Ilias for time to think. He agrees but smoothly adds a veiled threat, reminding her that as the Empire's only direct male heir, any choice other than him would cause chaos. After he leaves, the horrifying truth crashes down on Elena. The Imperial family has the pentagram mark. Ferris has that mark. The High Priest isn't just lying, he's using Ferris's secret royal lineage to spark a civil war, placing Elena at the very heart of the conflict. The pieces of the High Priest's scheme violently click into place. Elena realizes the Church, having lost its influence, is using Ferris as a pawn to regain its power. They plan to weaken the Imperial family by orchestrating a brutal conflict between the Crown Prince and Ferris. By backing Ferris as a rival for her hand, they could ignite a civil war. If the Church formally acknowledged him, lords would flock to his cause. A terrifying thought freezes Elena. What if the lie is actually true, and Ferris really does have imperial blood? Alone on the balcony, Elena is haunted by memories of her past life. The brief happiness she shared with Ferris is overshadowed by the terrible tragedy that followed. She's trapped in a political nightmare. Prince Ilias had just threatened her with empire-wide chaos if she rejected him. At the same time, the High Priest's manipulative words echoed in her mind, urging her to name Ferris as her husband. The prince's proposal wasn't an offer. It was the trigger. His actions gave the church the perfect excuse to ignite their civil war. Her mind reels with the terrible truth. The temple, having lost its influence to the imperial family, is making its move. The High Priest plans to use Ferris, the other prince, to launch a full-blown counterattack against the crown. To keep him from becoming a pawn in their war, Elena realizes there's only one way. With tears streaming down her face, she decides she can never choose him. But as she collapses in despair on the balcony, an ominous spiritual power emerges, promising to tangle destiny and destroy this world of defiled descendants. Inside the temple, an aide delivers a shocking report to the High Priest. He asks if the rumors are true. Is the Crown Prince really trying to marry the Saintess? The High Priest confirms it, his calm facade cracking with fury. The aide mentions the custom of the Saintess marrying into the imperial family, but the High Priest isn't listening. He declares that someone who disregards the Great Temple will never be allowed to ascend the throne. With his political scheme in motion, he makes a final, chilling decision. It is time to contact Tartarus. The High Priest drops his pious act, revealing his sinister game. To him, the Saintess is merely a prisoner of the crown. But he has a plan. He intends to test the man Elena once chose, Ferris, to see what he's really made of. The High Priest's scheme is to pit the Empire's greedy fools against each other in a chaotic power struggle. His ultimate goal is to force Elena back under the temple's absolute control. Miles away, the mercenary group Tartarus finishes a job with chilling ease, ready for their next high-stakes contract. At the Tartarus headquarters, Hector explains their path forward. He hopes a rebellion breaks out, or even better, that the Saintess gets attacked again. The more chaos, the more chances they have to prove their worth. A conflicted Pallas thinks this is going too far, but Hector dismisses his concerns. He reminds the younger mercenary that their target is the fake Saintess. Cutting through their debate, Ferris speaks for the first time. He declares with chilling certainty that every single person who casts them into the abyss is their enemy, period. Hector lays out their delicate strategy, warning Ferris that growing too strong too fast will only make their enemies suspicious. It's why Ferris wisely turned down an offer of land. After all, they've already secured a position as the Crown Prince's personal knight order. But Hector realizes the prince is playing a deeper game, counting on them to stir the pot. Refusing to be a pawn, Ferris smashes a chess piece on the board. Seeing this, Hector suggests they beat the prince to the punch and ignite a war between the temple and the empire themselves. Pallas is stunned, questioning if Hector can truly start a war. Hector smirks, ruffling the younger mercenary's hair and reminding him that he's Tartarus's top strategist. The plan is simple: exploit the power struggle over the fake Saintess. That one word, fake, catches in Ferris's mind, triggering a powerful vision. He remembers once vowing to set Elena free. But the memory instantly sours, twisting into the horrific moment of his betrayal, with Elena on the floor, staring at his bloodied sword and crying out his name in confusion. Ferris is ripped from his thoughts, the brutal vision playing out in his mind. He sees himself standing over Elena's fallen form, his sword dripping. A wave of shock washes over him as he barely whispers her name, a question hanging in the air. But as he looks down at her peaceful face, another figure emerges from the memory. It's the High Priest, stained and grinning. He laughs manically, declaring that this tragic outcome is for the best. It was the only way, he raves, to prevent the Saintess from being defiled. The High Priest's sick justification pushes Ferris past his limit. Fueled by a raw, blinding fury, he unleashes a powerful strike within the vision. The blade cuts through the air, and the priest's manic laughter is silenced for good as he collapses to the ground. The entire chamber is painted in a grim crimson. Just as Ferris thinks his world is forever stained by this darkness, a pair of soft, glowing hands gently cover his eyes. The violent memory dissolves, replaced by a wash of pure, calming light. The blinding light gives way to a torrent of memories, but this time, they are Ferris's own. He remembers returning to the past not as a man, but as a 7-year-old boy. It was the exact day he discovered the filthiness of his own bloodline in a world where gods and prayers were nothing but lies. Unsure why he was given this second chance, his resolve became steel. This time, he would not make a mistake. He would save Elena and free her from the title of fake Saintess. For her sake, he chose to become Tartarus, the king of the abyss. Inside the opulent palace, Prince Ilias abruptly enters Elena's chambers. He arrives bearing extravagant gifts, a breathtaking new dress, and a dazzling array of jewels laid out for her. With a smooth smile, he remarks that she seems to have lost weight and casually offers to have her dresses tailored again. The sheer audacity of the gesture leaves one of her attendants completely bewildered. She stammers, asking His Highness for the meaning of this sudden and overwhelming display of royal favor. It's a clear power play from the calculating prince. Prince Ilias explains his grand gesture, announcing that the annual Grand Festival of the Saintess's Ascension is just around the corner. With a smug smile, he declares that such a special occasion calls for several new dresses, which he has already prepared for her. The festival's name sends a chill down Elena's spine. She remembers its history, a celebration for the first Saintess who married into the Imperial family and brought peace to the Empire. The sudden realization makes her break out in a cold sweat. This yearly tradition is just another terrible memory from her past life. Elena feels the prince's gesture is completely over the top, but before she can object, he reveals his true motive. He wants to make the grand festival the day of their engagement. While her attendants gasp with excitement, Elena freezes in horror. Ilias then reminds her of his past proposal, smugly stating that he expects her to give her answer on the day of the festival, in front of all the subjects waiting to celebrate. The prince has publicly backed her into a corner, and his confident smile shows he fully expects to get his way. Elena immediately realizes the prince's game. He cornered her on purpose, making it nearly impossible to refuse him in front of everyone. She knows she has to be careful around this man, but her determination doesn't waver. Her one and only goal is to protect Ferris, even if it means sacrificing her own happiness and marrying someone else. Just as she steals her resolve, Ilias drops a chilling bombshell. He calmly states that for the festival, they will need the heart of the Saintess from the Great Temple, leaving Elena utterly horrified. The High Priest states that Elena will be returning to the Great Temple. With a grin, Prince Ilias asks if they should have clothes tailored for the sea voyage. A shocked Elena questions why she must go back. The High Priest explains that tradition dictates only the Saintess can touch the heart of the first Saintess. This makes her the only one who can bring the relic to the capital. But Elena knows this is just a setup. She remembers they've held the festival without it for 5 years, realizing they're just using a past bandit attack as an excuse. Elena questions the timing of it all. What could the prince possibly be thinking? But as she clenches her fists, she realizes this might be a golden opportunity. She dreads seeing the High Priest, but the trip could give her vital information about Ferris and Tartarus. Remembering the man she is destined to save, she makes a silent vow. If Ferris is truly connected to Tartarus, she will stake everything to protect him. To do that, she needs the knowledge and wisdom to face whatever comes next. This journey is her first step. A month later, Elena stands at the port, ready to set sail. Her resolve is ironclad. She vows to become stronger for the fight ahead. She formally informs Prince Ilias of her departure, stating her mission to retrieve the heart of the first Saintess from the Great Temple. Putting on a convincing show, Ilias says it will be lonely with her gone. With a gentle smile, he adds that her sacred duties must come first, acting the part of the supportive fiancé as he sees her off on her journey. Prince Ilias explains that this year's festival must be special, as it's when the future empress will be decided. To mark the occasion, he insists they absolutely must have the first Saintess's relic present. Elena's mind races, picturing the legendary woman said to possess powers from God himself. But something feels off. She knows the current imperial family aren't her direct descendants. As she thinks about it, she realizes there are almost no records of the Saintess from that chaotic era, as if history itself is hiding a dark secret. Elena's mind connects the dots. The imperial line started with the second Saintess, who became empress. If Elena wants to protect Ferris, she has only one real option. She must join that family and claim the empress's power for herself. But as she stands by the water, the realization of the journey ahead sends a shiver down her spine. A traumatic memory of a past sea voyage surfaces, making her freeze in terror. Prince Ilias smirks, reminding her of that terrifying experience she once endured, showing he knows her deepest fears. Seeing Elena paralyzed by her past trauma, Prince Ilias offers a twisted solution. He coolly informs her that, for her sake, he will assign his own knights to her detail. He assures her that the legendary mercenary group, Tartarus, will be her protectors for the entire journey. On cue, two formidable men in stark black uniforms appear. Elena's jaw drops. Her eyes lock onto the man in the lead, and her world stops. It's Ferris, the man she loved, the man who ended her life, now standing before her as her guard.